Good morning. I'm Dr. Chen. And what I'm about to share with you today might completely change how you look at your dinner plate tonight. In fact, after 32 years of treating stroke patients, I can tell you with absolute certainty that some of the most devastating brain injuries I've witnessed didn't come from smoking, drinking, or even genetics. They came from a simple bowl of spinach salad eaten at the wrong time of day. Yes, you heard that correctly. That innocent green vegetable sitting in your refrigerator right now. The one your doctor has been telling you to eat more of your entire life. Could be quietly orchestrating the perfect conditions for a stroke while you sleep. And it's not just spinach. There are 11 other common vegetables that millions of Americans over 60 eat every single day, completely unaware that they're playing Russian roulette with their brain health. Now, before you think I've lost my mind, let me ask you this. Have you ever wondered why stroke rates continue to climb despite people eating more vegetables than ever before? Have you noticed that some of the healthiest eaters you know, the ones who religiously follow every dietary guideline, are the same ones ending up in my emergency room with slurred speech and paralyzed limbs? There's a reason for that. And it has everything to do with how our aging bodies process foods that were once perfectly safe. You see, what the medical community isn't telling you is that your body at 70 is fundamentally different from your body at 40. Your blood vessels aren't as flexible. Your kidneys don't filter as efficiently. Your liver processes nutrients differently. And most importantly, the medications you're taking to stay healthy are creating new chemical interactions with foods that nobody warned you about. Let me paint you a picture of what I see in my practice every single week. Mrs. Henderson, 73 years old, comes to see me after her third mini-stroke this year. She's confused, frustrated, and scared. Dr. Chen, she says, I don't understand. I eat more vegetables than my granddaughter. I take all my medications. I exercise every day. Why does this keep happening to me? And that's when I have to sit down with her and explain something that no medical school prepares you for: how the very foods we've been taught to trust can become silent weapons against our brain health as we age. The conversation I have with Mrs. Henderson is one I've had thousands of times. And it's the same conversation I need to have with you today. The truth is, there's a hidden epidemic happening in American kitchens right now. Millions of seniors are unknowingly consuming what I call stroke vegetables, 12 specific, common, healthy foods that, when eaten at the wrong time, in the wrong combinations, or by people taking certain medications, can trigger a cascade of events leading to blood clots, brain bleeds, and cognitive decline. Think about your last meal. Did you have a salad with romaine lettuce? Some cooked broccoli? Maybe a glass of fresh carrot juice? Perhaps you added extra garlic to your cooking, or enjoyed some corn on the cob. If you're over 60, any one of those seemingly innocent choices could have started a biological process that won't show symptoms until it's too late. The scariest part: most people never feel it coming. No chest pain. No warning signs. Just a sudden inability to speak or move that changes everything forever. But here's what gives me hope, and why I'm sharing this with you today: knowledge is power. Once you understand how these 12 vegetables interact with your aging body and your medications, you can make simple adjustments that will dramatically reduce your stroke risk. You don't have to give up the foods you love. You just need to know when and how to eat them safely. Over the next several segments, I'm going to walk you through each of these 12 vegetables systematically. We'll start with the blood clot-inducing vegetables: spinach, broccoli, and garlic. Foods that can dangerously thicken or thin your blood depending on your medications. Then we'll explore the dehydration-causing vegetables like romaine lettuce, asparagus, and celery, which can concentrate your blood and create perfect conditions for clotting while you sleep. Next, we'll examine the blood sugar disruptors, raw carrots, corn, and beetroot, vegetables that can create dangerous glucose fluctuations leading to vascular stress and clot formation. We'll also cover the blood pressure manipulators like onions and water spinach, which can cause dangerous pressure swings that stress your brain's delicate blood vessels. Finally, we'll discuss the stroke mimics, tomatoes, and other nightshade vegetables that can create symptoms identical to stroke without actually causing one, often leading to misdiagnosis and missed opportunities for real prevention. Some of these vegetables will surprise you. Others might shock you. But all of them have one thing in common: they're sitting in grocery carts and refrigerators across America right now, trusted by families who have no idea they could be contributing to the 795,000 strokes that occur in this country every year. Now, I want to be clear about something before we dive deeper. This isn't about creating fear around food. This is about empowering you with information that could save your life or the life of someone you love. Every stroke I've prevented through education is a family that didn't have to watch their loved one struggle to remember their name or learn to walk again. The reality is that stroke prevention has become incredibly complex in our modern world. We're living longer, taking more medications, and dealing with health challenges our grandparents never faced. The simple dietary advice of eat more vegetables that worked 50 years ago doesn't account for the intricate web of drug interactions, age-related, physiological changes, and food processing methods that define health in the 21st century. Consider this: the average American over 65 takes 4 different prescription medications daily. Each of these medications changes how your body processes nutrients. Some thin your blood, others affect your blood pressure, and many influence how your kidneys and liver function. When you add certain vegetables to this mix, you're essentially conducting a chemistry experiment in your bloodstream, often with unpredictable and dangerous results. What makes this even more concerning is that many of these interactions are dose-dependent and timing-dependent. The same spinach salad that's perfectly safe at lunch could be setting you up for a stroke if eaten at dinner. The broccoli that helps your heart when eaten twice a week could be disrupting your blood clotting mechanisms when eaten daily. These are the nuances that standard nutritional advice simply doesn't address. I've spent the last decade researching these connections, and what I've discovered has fundamentally changed how I counsel my patients about diet and stroke prevention. The traditional model of good foods and bad foods is not only outdated, it's dangerous for the aging population. We need a new framework that considers the whole person, their age, medications, medical history, and even the time of day they're eating. That's exactly what I'm going to provide you with today. By the time we're finished, you'll have a completely new understanding of how to navigate nutrition after 60. You'll know which vegetables to be cautious with, when to eat them safely, and how to spot the warning signs that your diet might be working against your brain health. But first, let me share with you the story that changed everything for me as a physician. It involves a patient named Robert, a 68-year-old retired teacher who did everything right according to conventional wisdom, yet still suffered a massive stroke that left him unable to care for himself. Robert's story illustrates perfectly why we need to completely rethink our approach to nutrition for seniors. And it sets the stage for our deep dive into the first category of dangerous vegetables, the blood clot inducers. Robert's case opened my eyes to how spinach, the first vegetable on our list of 12, can transform from superfood to stroke trigger through a mechanism that most doctors never learn about. Are you ready to discover how this trusted green can quietly harden your arteries and create microscopic time bombs in your brain's blood vessels? Robert Martinez was the kind of man everyone in his neighborhood looked up to. At 68, he still taught weekend carpentry classes at the local community center. maintained a garden that was the envy of his street, and took his daily 2-mile walks religiously. When I first met Robert, he was lying in a hospital bed, unable to speak, the right side of his body completely paralyzed. His wife Maria sat beside him, tears streaming down her face as she whispered, "Doctor." He was the healthiest person I knew. Robert's story began 6 months earlier when his doctor told him his cholesterol was slightly elevated and his blood pressure needed better control. Like millions of Americans his age, Robert decided to take control of his health naturally. He researched heart-healthy diets, consulted nutrition websites, and even bought a juicer. Every morning, he started his day with a glass of fresh vegetable juice. Every lunch, he ate a large spinach salad with olive oil dressing. And every dinner ended with a generous serving of steamed broccoli. Because, as he told Maria, if a little is good, more must be better. Robert was also on 4 medications that are incredibly common for men his age: a blood thinner to prevent clots, a blood pressure medication, a vitamin D supplement for bone health, and a daily multivitamin that contained calcium. On paper, Robert was doing everything right. His doctors were pleased with his commitment to healthy eating. His family admired his discipline. But what none of them realized was that Robert was unknowingly creating the perfect storm in his bloodstream. The morning Robert's life changed forever started like any other. He prepared his usual vegetable juice blend, had his spinach salad for lunch, and enjoyed his evening broccoli while watching the news. That night, as he slept peacefully beside Maria, a series of chemical reactions were taking place in his body that would alter the course of both their lives forever. Let me explain what was happening inside Robert's body with our first dangerous vegetable: spinach. For decades, we've been told that spinach is one of the healthiest foods we can eat. Packed with iron, folate, and antioxidants. It's the star of smoothies, salads, and countless healthy recipes. But here's what they don't tell you: spinach contains extremely high levels of compounds called oxalates. And as we age, our bodies become increasingly unable to process these compounds safely. When you eat spinach after 60, especially if you're taking calcium or vitamin D supplements like Robert was, you're creating the perfect environment for calcium oxalate crystal formation. These microscopic crystals don't just affect your kidneys, they begin to accumulate in your bloodstream and deposit in your arteries. Particularly the small, delicate vessels that feed your brain. Over time, these deposits cause your arteries to harden and narrow through a process called arterial calcification. This makes your blood more likely to clot, especially during periods when your blood flow naturally slows down, such as when you're sleeping. The result can be what doctors call a silent stroke, a blood clot that blocks oxygen to part of your brain without causing dramatic symptoms until the damage is already done. But Robert's case was complicated by our second dangerous vegetable: broccoli. Most of us grew up being told to eat our broccoli because it's rich in fiber, antioxidants, and vitamins that support heart health. And for good reason. Broccoli does have beneficial properties. But what most people don't realize is that broccoli contains extremely high amounts of vitamin K, a compound that directly interferes with blood-thinning medications. Every evening when Robert ate his large serving of steamed broccoli, he was essentially sabotaging his blood thinner medication. Vitamin K helps blood clot normally, which is important for healing wounds. But when you're taking anticoagulant medications like warfarin or Plavix, vitamin K becomes your enemy. The interaction can make your blood either dangerously thick, increasing clot risk, or paradoxically too thin, setting you up for bleeding complications. In Robert's case, the combination was particularly deadly. The oxalates from his daily spinach consumption were slowly hardening his arteries and creating rough spots where clots could easily form. Meanwhile, the vitamin K from his nightly broccoli was creating wild fluctuations in his blood's ability to clot, swinging from too thick to too thin, without any warning symptoms. The third factor that sealed Robert's fate was timing. Robert consumed his largest portions of both spinach and broccoli in the evening, just hours before his body entered its most vulnerable state during sleep. During the night, blood pressure naturally drops, circulation slows, and the cardiovascular system operates in a more fragile state. This is when the accumulated effects of oxalate crystal formation and vitamin K interference create the perfect conditions for stroke. Maria found him the next morning, staring blankly at the ceiling, unable to move or speak. The paramedics rushed him to our emergency room, where scans revealed a massive ischemic stroke. Multiple blood clots had formed overnight and lodged themselves in the arteries, feeding the left side of his brain, cutting off oxygen to areas controlling speech and movement. As I stood beside Robert's bed that first day, reviewing his medical history and trying to piece together what had happened, I noticed something that made my heart sink. Every single food choice Robert had made in the name of health had actually increased his stroke risk. The vegetables he trusted, the timing of his meals, the combinations he chose, it was a textbook example of how good intentions can lead to devastating consequences. This was my wake-up call as a physician. Robert wasn't an isolated case. Over the following months, I began to see a pattern in my stroke patients involving these same two vegetables. They weren't the people you'd expect, they were health-conscious seniors who read labels, followed guidelines, and genuinely tried to do everything right. Take Harold Brennan, a 76-year-old retired firefighter who had always been disciplined with his health. After his wife passed away, Harold became even more dedicated to taking care of himself. Every evening, like clockwork, he'd fix himself a spinach salad with feta cheese, followed by his calcium and vitamin D supplements. Harold thought he was honoring his wife's memory by staying healthy. He had no idea that his nightly routine was slowly poisoning his circulation. For months, Harold's body had been accumulating calcium oxalate deposits in his cerebral arteries. His blood vessels were gradually stiffening. His circulation was becoming increasingly compromised, and microscopic clots were beginning to form. One winter morning, Harold didn't wake up the same. He was found slumped over his kitchen table. Coffee spilled. Words jumbled. He had suffered a silent stroke overnight, with scans showing the characteristic pattern of oxalate-induced arterial calcification. Or consider Clara Newton, an 82-year-old retired elementary school teacher, who was always health-conscious. After a minor heart procedure, Clara was prescribed warfarin and told to watch her greens. But like most patients, she didn't understand the specifics. So Clara did what any health-conscious senior would do. She researched heart-healthy foods and found countless articles praising broccoli. Every evening for 3 months, Clara prepared the same dinner, a generous serving of steamed broccoli with olive oil and lemon, convinced she was accelerating her healing process. What Clara didn't realize was that each bite was quietly sabotaging her medication and creating dangerous fluctuations in her blood's ability to clot. The day Clara's world changed forever started with what seemed like a minor headache. But this headache grew progressively worse, accompanied by nausea and confusion. By evening, Clara was struggling to find the right words when her daughter called. The emergency room CT scan revealed a hemorrhagic stroke. A blood vessel in her brain had ruptured because her blood had become too thin to clot properly. The combination of vitamin K and anticoagulants had created the perfect storm for catastrophic bleeding. These stories illustrate the fundamental problem with our current approach to vegetable consumption for aging adults. We've been operating under the assumption that vegetables are universally beneficial, regardless of timing, quantity, or individual health circumstances. But the reality is far more complex. The oxalates in spinach that were harmless when you were 40 can become arterial calcification agents when you're 70 and taking supplements. The vitamin K in broccoli that supported healthy blood clotting in your younger years can become a dangerous medication disruptor when you're on anticoagulants. The timing that didn't matter in your youth becomes critical when your cardiovascular system is operating with less resilience. But here's the crucial point: you don't have to eliminate these vegetables entirely. You need to understand how to consume them safely based on your individual circumstances. If you're taking calcium or vitamin D supplements, limit spinach to small portions in the morning. Never in the evening. If you're on blood thinners, maintain consistent, small amounts of broccoli and communicate every dietary change to your doctor so they can adjust your medication accordingly. The lesson from Robert, Harold, and Clara isn't to fear these vegetables, it's to respect their power and understand their interactions with your aging body and medications. Knowledge transforms risk into safety, but only when applied thoughtfully and with professional guidance. But if you think spinach and broccoli represent the full scope of blood clot-inducing vegetables, you're in for a surprise. Our third vegetable in this category is one that's been called medicinal by cultures around the world, praised for its ability to fight infections and support heart health. Yet for seniors taking blood-thinning medications, this aromatic bulb can quietly transform from healer to threat, pushing blood chemistry past the point of safety into dangerous bleeding territory. Are you ready to discover how this kitchen staple, probably sitting in your pantry right now, could be turning your bloodstream into a ticking time bomb that won't show symptoms until a blood vessel in your brain can no longer withstand the pressure? I'm talking about garlic, that pungent, aromatic bulb that has been revered as both food and medicine for over 5,000 years. Garlic has earned its reputation honestly through centuries of use and modern scientific validation. Research has confirmed what ancient healers suspected: garlic can lower blood pressure, reduce cholesterol, fight infections, and even help prevent certain cancers. For many seniors, garlic represents the perfect marriage of flavor and health benefits. Whether they're adding fresh cloves to their cooking or taking concentrated garlic supplements. But here's the terrifying truth that most people never learn: garlic is one of nature's most potent blood thinners. When you consume garlic, especially in supplement form or large quantities, you're essentially taking an unregulated anticoagulant medication. For seniors who are already on prescription blood thinners, adding garlic to their routine can push their blood into a dangerously thin state where even minor trauma can cause life-threatening bleeding, including spontaneous bleeding in the brain. This is exactly what happened to Thomas Reeves, an 81-year-old retired railroad engineer from Missouri, who embodied the American spirit of self-reliance. Thomas had always been the kind of man who believed in taking control of his own destiny. When doctors told him he needed to take blood thinners after a minor heart procedure, Thomas accepted the prescription but decided he could enhance its effects naturally. Thomas had read extensively about garlic's cardiovascular benefits. He found studies showing that garlic could reduce blood pressure, lower cholesterol, and improve circulation. The logic seemed flawless to him if prescribed blood thinning was protective, and garlic provided natural blood thinning effects. Then combining them would offer even better protection for his heart and brain. Every morning, Thomas took his prescribed warfarin exactly as directed. But he also added a 600 mg garlic supplement to his routine, convinced he was providing his cardiovascular system with extra protection. In the evenings, he enjoyed cooking with fresh garlic, often adding 3 or 4 cloves to his dinner because he loved the flavor and believed in its healing properties. For 3 weeks, Thomas felt fantastic. His energy was good, his appetite was strong, and he was proud of his proactive approach to heart health. He didn't tell his doctor about the garlic supplements because he considered them a natural food product, not a medication. This decision would prove to be a catastrophic mistake. The compound responsible for garlic's blood-thinning effects is called allicin. And it's incredibly powerful. Allicin works by inhibiting platelet aggregation, which means it prevents your blood cells from clumping together to form clots. When Thomas combined his prescription anticoagulants with high-dose garlic, he was essentially doubling down on blood thinning through two different mechanisms, creating a situation where his blood could no longer clot properly. The first warning signs were subtle. Thomas began noticing that small cuts took an unusually long time to stop bleeding. When he nicked himself shaving, the bleeding seemed excessive for such a minor wound. He developed bruises on his arms and legs that he couldn't remember causing. But Thomas attributed these changes to his prescribed blood thinner, never suspecting that his garlic consumption was amplifying these effects to dangerous levels. The morning that changed Thomas's life forever began with what seemed like a minor headache. Thomas had experienced headaches before, so he took his usual over-the-counter pain reliever and went about his morning routine. But this headache was different. It grew progressively worse throughout the day, accompanied by nausea and sensitivity to light that made it difficult for him to concentrate. By afternoon, Thomas was experiencing confusion and difficulty finding the right words when his daughter called to check on him. She was immediately concerned by how different he sounded. His speech was slow and slurred, and he seemed unable to follow the conversation. When Thomas mentioned his severe headache and nausea, his daughter didn't hesitate. She drove straight to his house and found him sitting in his living room, conscious, but clearly in serious distress. The emergency room CT scan revealed the devastating truth: Thomas was suffering from a hemorrhagic stroke. A blood vessel in his brain had ruptured, flooding the surrounding tissue with blood and creating pressure that was literally crushing parts of his brain. This wasn't a stroke caused by high blood pressure or arterial disease. This was a bleeding stroke caused by blood that had become too thin to clot properly. Thomas survived his hemorrhagic stroke, but the recovery process was long and incomplete. The bleeding had damaged areas of his brain responsible for balance and fine motor control. After months of rehabilitation, he regained most of his cognitive function, but he never recovered his previous level of physical coordination. The man who had once worked with precision tools now struggled with tasks as simple as buttoning his shirt. But garlic isn't the only dehydrating vegetable that can create dangerous conditions for stroke. Our fourth dangerous vegetable is one that seems like the perfect diet food: low in calories, high in water content, and supposedly ideal for anyone trying to maintain a healthy weight. I'm talking about celery. And what most people don't realize is that this innocent-looking stalk harbors a hidden mechanism that can quietly dehydrate your body overnight. Celery contains high levels of natural sodium and possesses strong diuretic properties. For seniors, especially those already taking blood pressure medications or diuretics, consuming celery can trigger significant fluid loss that becomes dangerous during the vulnerable hours of sleep. This is what happened to Margaret Wilson, a 73-year-old retired secretary from Ohio, who discovered celery juice as part of a health cleanse she read about online. Margaret began drinking fresh celery juice every evening, convinced it would cleanse her system and help with her arthritis pain. What Margaret didn't realize was that the natural diuretic effects of celery, combined with her blood pressure medication, were creating a nightly cycle of dehydration that was slowly concentrating her blood and making it more prone to clotting. The changes happened gradually. Margaret began waking up feeling dizzy and disoriented. Some mornings, she couldn't remember simple things like what day it was, or where she had placed her reading glasses. Her daughter noticed that Margaret seemed confused during their phone calls, sometimes struggling to find the right words or losing track of the conversation. One morning, Margaret's neighbor found her collapsed in her driveway, conscious but unable to speak clearly or move her right arm normally. The emergency room evaluation revealed that Margaret had suffered a series of small strokes. Tiny blood clots had formed overnight due to dehydration-induced blood thickening and lodged themselves in various parts of her brain, causing cumulative damage to her cognitive function. Our fifth dangerous vegetable brings us to the blood pressure manipulators. And it's one that's in almost every American kitchen. Onions seem harmless enough, they're flavorful, affordable, and full of compounds that are supposed to support heart health. But for older adults, especially those on blood pressure medications, onions can create unpredictable drops in blood pressure that trigger dangerous vascular responses. Onions contain a compound called quercetin, a powerful antioxidant that acts as a natural vasodilator, meaning it opens up your blood vessels and lowers your blood pressure. While that sounds beneficial, when your system is already being medicated to control blood pressure, you're essentially doubling the effect. This can lead to hypotension, an unsafe drop in blood pressure that's particularly dangerous during sleep. George Langston, an 80-year-old retired high school football coach from Georgia, learned this the hard way. After his doctor prescribed a beta blocker for high blood pressure, George decided to enhance the effect naturally. Every night for 2 months, he ate a generous serving of raw onions in a vinegar-based salad, believing he was doubling down on heart protection. At first, George felt great, lighter, more energetic. Then came the lightheadedness in the mornings and dizziness when getting out of bed. One evening, he stood up too fast and blacked out, hitting his shoulder on the table. The next morning, George couldn't remember what day it was and slurred his words when speaking. The emergency room diagnosis was an ischemic stroke. George's blood pressure chart showed significant overnight drops followed by reactive surges in the early morning. The combination of his medication and onion-heavy diet had created wild fluctuations in his vascular system, first overdilating his blood vessels, then triggering rapid constriction as his body tried to compensate. This roller coaster effect had created perfect conditions for clot formation in his already narrowed arteries. What makes these three vegetables particularly dangerous is how they interact with the medications that most seniors take daily. Garlic amplifies the effects of blood thinners, potentially causing dangerous bleeding. Celery compounds the dehydrating effects of diuretics and blood pressure medications, concentrating the blood and increasing clot risk. Onions can cause dangerous blood pressure fluctuations when combined with cardiovascular medications. The timing factor is crucial for all three. Evening consumption is particularly problematic because it coincides with your body's natural circadian rhythms. During sleep, your cardiovascular system operates in a more vulnerable state, blood pressure drops, heart rate slows, and circulation decreases. If you've consumed these vegetables in the hours before bed, you're setting up dangerous conditions just as your body enters its most fragile period. But the solution isn't to eliminate these vegetables entirely. Garlic, celery, and onions all have legitimate health benefits when consumed appropriately. The key is understanding how to use them safely based on your individual medications and health status. If you're taking blood thinners, avoid garlic supplements entirely and limit fresh garlic to small culinary amounts earlier in the day. If you're on blood pressure or diuretic medications, consume celery and onions in moderation during daytime hours when your body can better compensate for their effects. Most importantly, never assume that natural means safe when you're taking prescription medications. Every supplement, every large serving of medicinal foods, every dietary change should be discussed with your healthcare team. Your body at 70 is conducting a complex chemistry experiment every time you eat. And the interactions between foods and medications can be just as powerful as interactions between different drugs. The stories of Thomas, Margaret, and George illustrate why we need a completely new approach to nutrition education for aging adults. These weren't careless people making obviously poor choices, they were health-conscious seniors trying to enhance their wellness through natural means. But they were operating with incomplete information about how their aging bodies and medications would interact with foods they believed were universally beneficial. As we move forward in our exploration of stroke-inducing vegetables, we'll discover that the dehydration-causing foods represent just one category of hidden dangers. Coming next, we'll explore the blood sugar disruptors, seemingly innocent vegetables that can create dangerous glucose fluctuations leading to vascular stress and clot formation while you sleep. Are you ready to learn how the orange vegetable you probably consider the perfect healthy snack could be quietly sabotaging your blood sugar stability and creating the ideal conditions for overnight stroke risk? I'm talking about carrots, those bright orange roots that have been synonymous with healthy snacking for generations. Carrots seem like the perfect choice when you're craving something sweet but want to avoid processed sugar. They're crunchy, naturally sweet, portable, and packed with beta-carotene. That's supposed to be good for your eyes. Many seniors keep a bag of baby carrots in their refrigerator, specifically for those moments when they want a guilt-free evening snack while watching television or reading. But here's what the nutrition labels don't tell you when you eat raw carrots alone. Especially in the evening. You're essentially consuming a concentrated dose of natural sugars that can wreak havoc on your blood glucose levels. And for seniors, whose bodies are already struggling to maintain stable blood sugar, this innocent snacking habit can create dangerous fluctuations that increase stroke risk while they sleep. This deadly sequence of events is what happened to Leah Henderson, a 78-year-old retired nurse from Portland, who prided herself on maintaining her health through natural means. Leah had spent 40 years caring for others. And when she retired, she was determined to apply her medical knowledge to her own wellness. She had successfully eliminated all processed sweets from her diet and replaced them with what she considered healthy alternatives. Leah's evening ritual had become sacred to her. Every night after dinner, while settling in to read or watch her favorite programs, she would enjoy what she called her nature's candy, a generous bowl of baby carrots. Sometimes she would eat an entire bag, crunching contentedly while feeling virtuous about her healthy choices. "It's so much better than cookies or ice cream," she would tell her friends, encouraging them to adopt similar habits. What Leah didn't realize was that her nightly carrot consumption was creating a dangerous roller coaster effect with her blood sugar. When you bite into a raw carrot, you're releasing sugars that are quickly absorbed into your bloodstream, causing your blood glucose to spike within minutes. In a young person with robust insulin sensitivity, this spike is quickly managed. But in seniors like Leah, especially those with even mild insulin resistance, this process becomes much more problematic. Here's what was happening in Leah's body. Every night her blood sugar would rise rapidly from the carrots, triggering her pancreas to release insulin. But in many older adults, the insulin response is either sluggish or overly aggressive. This caused Leah's blood sugar to plummet during the night, a condition called nocturnal hypoglycemia that's far more dangerous than most people realize. When your blood sugar crashes while you're sleeping, your body interprets this as a life-threatening emergency. It responds by flooding your system with stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline, designed to raise your blood sugar back to safe levels. But these same hormones also constrict your blood vessels, increase your blood pressure, and make your blood more prone to clotting, exactly the opposite of what you want happening in your brain during the vulnerable hours of sleep. The changes started subtly for Leah. She began waking up some mornings feeling slightly off, not quite sick, but not quite right either. She would experience mild confusion upon waking, occasionally forgetting what day it was or having trouble remembering her morning routine. Sometimes she felt dizzy when getting out of bed, and there were mornings when her hands would tingle inexplicably. As a former nurse, Leah was aware that cognitive changes could happen gradually with aging. And she didn't want to be the kind of person who overreacted to every minor symptom. What neither Leia nor her doctor realized was that her symptoms were occurring during a specific window. The early morning hours when her blood sugar was rebounding from the overnight crashes caused by her evening carrot consumption. The morning that changed Leia's life started with what seemed like her usual mild confusion upon waking. But this time, the disorientation didn't clear, as it normally did. When Leia tried to get out of bed to start her morning routine, she realized she couldn't remember how to make coffee, a process she had performed automatically every day for 40 years. The emergency room evaluation revealed that Leia had suffered what doctors call a silent stroke. A blood clot had formed overnight and blocked circulation to a small but crucial area of her brain, responsible for procedural memory and executive function. Tests revealed the hidden truth about her blood sugar patterns throughout the day. Her glucose levels were perfectly normal. But starting about 2 hours after her evening carrot consumption, her blood sugar would spike dramatically, followed by a crash around 3 a.m. that triggered the release of stress hormones. Our sixth dangerous vegetable takes us deeper into the blood sugar disruption category. And it's one that many seniors consume believing they're making a heart-healthy choice. Corn may seem harmless, it's sweet, familiar, and often served as a healthy side dish at family gatherings. But nutritionally, corn behaves more like a starch than a vegetable. And its high glycemic impact can create the same dangerous blood sugar fluctuations that make carrots problematic for aging adults. This is what happened to Darlene Abbott, a 77-year-old retired librarian from Iowa, who had always lived simply and made meals from scratch. Every morning, Darlene ate a bowl of corn grits topped with a touch of honey. And in the evening, she enjoyed corn on the cob with dinner, a taste of my childhood, she'd say. But over time, she began feeling tired in the mornings, dizzy when standing up, and sometimes struggled to focus. Her blood pressure was erratic, normal one day, spiking the next. Then came the morning her husband found her staring blankly, unable to move the left side of her body. She had suffered a minor ischemic stroke overnight. Tests revealed elevated fasting glucose, thickened blood viscosity, and microvascular damage in her brain. The regular intake of high glycemic corn, especially at night, had disrupted her glucose balance and helped form tiny blood clots in the cerebral arteries. But perhaps the most surprising member of our blood sugar disruption category is beetroot, a vegetable that's been praised by health enthusiasts and athletes for its supposed performance benefits. Beetroot juice has become popular among seniors who've read about its potential to lower blood pressure and improve circulation. What they don't realize is that beetroot contains both high levels of natural nitrates and concentrated sugars that can create a dangerous double effect. Chen, a 69-year-old retired accountant from California, began drinking beetroot juice every morning after reading about its cardiovascular benefits. Robert was also taking blood pressure medication, and he thought the beetroot would provide natural enhancement. What Robert didn't anticipate was that the combination of nitrates from beetroot and his medication would cause his blood pressure to drop to dangerous levels. The high sugar content of beetroot juice also created blood glucose spikes that, combined with the hypotensive effects, put tremendous stress on Robert's cardiovascular system. After 2 weeks of his morning beetroot routine, Robert began feeling dizzy and fatigued. One morning, when he stood up from bed, he collapsed and lost consciousness. His blood pressure had dropped to critically low levels, causing temporary oxygen deprivation to his brain. What makes these three vegetables particularly dangerous is how they exploit the vulnerabilities of aging metabolism. As we get older, our bodies become less efficient at processing sudden influxes of sugar, even natural sugars from vegetables. Our insulin responses become unpredictable, and our cardiovascular systems become less able to handle the stress of blood sugar fluctuations. The timing factor is crucial for all three. Evening consumption of high glycemic vegetables like carrots and corn sets up a pattern of overnight blood sugar crashes that coincide with the body's natural period of cardiovascular vulnerability during sleep. Morning consumption of concentrated vegetable juices like beetroot can create dangerous interactions with medications that are designed to be taken on an empty stomach. The solution isn't to eliminate these vegetables entirely, but to understand how to consume them safely. Carrots are still an excellent source of antioxidants, but they should be eaten in smaller quantities, paired with protein or healthy fats, and never alone as an evening snack. Corn can be part of a balanced diet when consumed earlier in the day and in combination with foods that slow sugar absorption. Beetroot can provide beneficial nitrates, but seniors on blood pressure medications should start with very small amounts and monitor their response carefully. Most importantly, seniors need to understand that their body's responses to food have changed fundamentally since their younger years. The snacking habits that were harmless at 40 can become stroke triggers at 72. The portion sizes that provided energy in youth can overwhelm aging metabolic systems. The timing that didn't matter in earlier decades becomes critical when your cardiovascular system operates with less resilience. Leah, Darlene, and Robert all eventually learned to navigate these challenges, but at significant personal cost. They discovered that healthy eating for seniors requires a completely different approach than the general nutrition advice aimed at younger populations. It requires understanding not just what to eat, but when to eat it, how much to consume, and how individual foods interact with aging physiology and medications. As we prepare to explore our next category of dangerous vegetables, remember that knowledge is protection. Every story I've shared represents not just a cautionary tale, but an opportunity to prevent similar outcomes through informed choices. The goal isn't to create fear around food, but to empower you with the information you need to eat safely and confidently as your body changes with age. Coming next, we'll explore another category of vegetables that can create unexpected dangers for aging adults: the pressure manipulators and stroke mimics. These are vegetables that can cause symptoms identical to stroke without actually causing one, often leading to misdiagnosis and missed opportunities for real prevention. Are you ready to discover how the most common salad vegetable and the foundation of countless healthy meals could be quietly disrupting your body's fluid balance and setting you up for dangerous blood concentration while you sleep? I'm talking about romaine lettuce, the crisp, refreshing foundation of countless salads. The vegetable that's been marketed as the perfect late-night meal for weight-conscious seniors. Walk into any restaurant and you'll see older adults proudly ordering Caesar salads for dinner, convinced they're making a smart, heart-healthy choice. But what they don't realize is that this innocent-looking green leaf harbors a hidden mechanism that can quietly dehydrate their bodies overnight and create the perfect conditions for stroke, causing blood clots. The danger lies in romaine lettuce's natural diuretic properties. When you eat romaine, especially in the large quantities typical of dinner salads, you're consuming compounds that signal your kidneys to eliminate water from your bloodstream. For a young, well-hydrated person with strong kidney function, this mild, diuretic effect is barely noticeable. But for seniors, whose bodies already struggle to maintain proper hydration, eating romaine at night can tip them into a dangerous state of dehydration while they sleep. This is exactly what happened to Leon Carter, a 75-year-old retired factory worker from Indianapolis who thought he had figured out the secret to healthy aging. Leon had always been a practical man who approached problems with methodical precision. When his doctor told him he needed to lose 20 pounds and improve his cholesterol levels, Leon researched the most efficient ways to accomplish both goals. Leon discovered that eating large salads for dinner was a strategy recommended by numerous health websites and weight loss programs. The logic seemed sound: fill up on low-calorie, nutrient-dense vegetables in the evening to avoid heavier, more caloric foods. Leon embraced this approach wholeheartedly, preparing enormous romaine-based salads that often constituted his entire dinner. Every evening for 4 months, Leon consumed what he called his health bowl, 2 full heads of romaine lettuce topped with cucumbers, tomatoes, and a vinegar-based dressing. He was proud of his discipline and thrilled with the results. He lost 15 pounds. His energy improved during the day, and he felt like he had finally cracked the code on healthy aging. But Leon was unknowingly conducting a dangerous experiment with his cardiovascular system. His evening salad ritual was creating a nightly cycle of dehydration that was slowly altering his blood chemistry. Each night, as the diuretic effects of the romaine kicked in, Leon's blood became more concentrated. His red blood cells began clumping together more readily, and his platelets became stickier and more prone to forming clots. Here's what most people don't understand about aging and hydration: your body's thirst mechanism becomes significantly less reliable after 60. The same internal alarm system that once alerted you when you needed water begins to malfunction, leaving you chronically underhydrated without realizing it. When you combine evening romaine consumption with this existing hydration deficit, something dangerous happens in your bloodstream while you sleep. As your body eliminates the excess water stimulated by the lettuce's diuretic properties, your blood becomes increasingly concentrated. Think of it like reducing a sauce on the stove. As the water evaporates, what's left behind becomes thicker and more viscous. This blood thickening is particularly dangerous for seniors because their cardiovascular systems are already under stress from aging arteries and medication. The morning that changed Leon's life forever started like any other. He woke up at his usual 6 a.m. But something was wrong. When he tried to get out of bed, he felt confused and disoriented. His right arm felt heavy and unresponsive. And when he tried to call out to his wife, his words came out slurred and incomprehensible. Leon had suffered a mild stroke caused by dehydration-induced blood clots that had formed during the night. Our 9th dangerous vegetable takes the dehydration risk even further. Asparagus has long been praised as an elegant, sophisticated vegetable, light on calories, and often featured in detox-friendly diets. Many seniors have turned to asparagus as a staple for evening meals, believing they're making a healthy choice. But asparagus is one of the most powerful natural diuretics in the vegetable kingdom, and its effects can be devastating when consumed at the wrong time by aging adults. This is what happened to Joanne Ramsey, a 79-year-old retired school counselor from Colorado Springs who prided herself on her healthy habits. Joanne avoided red meat, walked every day, and cooked nearly every meal from scratch. Her favorite dinner was steamed asparagus with lemon and a touch of olive oil. "It made me feel clean," she told me later. Joanne was also on medication for high blood pressure and had a history of mild atrial fibrillation, both of which already placed her at risk for clotting. She didn't drink much water in the evenings, fearing nighttime trips to the bathroom, a common concern among seniors that ironically increases their vulnerability to dehydration-related complications. For months, Joanne's nightly asparagus consumption was pulling water from her bloodstream just as her body entered its most vulnerable state during sleep. The combination of her medications, her restricted evening fluid intake, and the powerful diuretic effects of asparagus created a perfect storm of blood concentration and increased clotting risk. One morning, Joanne didn't wake up the same. She was confused, couldn't recall her address, and slurred her words when trying to speak. Her husband immediately called 911. A CT scan showed a small ischemic stroke caused by a clot that had lodged in the brain's language center. Blood tests revealed elevated hematocrit levels, a sign that her blood had become too concentrated. Her doctors traced the pattern back to her nightly asparagus meals, compounded by diuretic medications and insufficient fluid intake. But perhaps the most surprising member of our remaining dangerous vegetables is one that many people have never heard of. Despite its growing popularity in health-conscious communities, water spinach, also known as kangkung or morning glory, has been praised for its nutritional density and supposed detoxifying properties. Many Asian American seniors incorporate water spinach into their diets, often consuming it in large quantities as part of traditional cooking practices. What makes water spinach particularly dangerous is its ability to rapidly deplete potassium from the body. This effect is so pronounced that in some cultures, water spinach is used medicinally specifically for its potassium-reducing properties. But for seniors, especially those taking heart medications or diuretics, this potassium depletion can trigger dangerous heart rhythm abnormalities that increase stroke risk. Linda Nguyen, a 71-year-old Vietnamese American from Houston, learned this lesson the hard way. Linda loved traditional water spinach dishes and often prepared large portions for dinner, sometimes eating an entire bunch of the vegetable in a single meal. She was also taking medication for heart rhythm problems and a diuretic for blood pressure control. The combination proved dangerous. Water spinach's potassium-depleting effects, combined with her diuretic medication, created severe electrolyte imbalances that affected her heart's electrical system. One night, Linda woke up with severe heart palpitations and difficulty breathing. At the hospital, doctors discovered that her potassium levels had dropped to dangerous levels, causing irregular heart rhythms that could have led to stroke or cardiac arrest. What makes these three vegetables particularly insidious is how they exploit the aging body's diminished ability to maintain fluid and electrolyte balance. As we get older, our kidneys become less efficient at conserving water and essential minerals. Our thirst sensation becomes unreliable. Our cardiovascular systems become more sensitive to changes in blood volume and concentration. The timing factor is crucial for all three vegetables. Evening consumption is particularly problematic because it coincides with the body's natural circadian rhythms. During sleep, blood pressure naturally drops, heart rate slows, and circulation decreases as part of normal rest patterns. If you've consumed dehydrating vegetables in the hours before bed, you're essentially setting up dangerous conditions just as your cardiovascular system enters its most vulnerable period. Leon, Joanne, and Linda all discovered that the vegetables they trusted were working against their aging bodies in ways they never anticipated. Leon's health bowl was systematically dehydrating him. Joanne's clean dinner was concentrating her blood to dangerous levels. Linda's traditional meals were depleting essential minerals needed for heart function. The solution isn't to eliminate these vegetables entirely. They all have legitimate nutritional benefits when consumed appropriately. Romaine lettuce is still an excellent source of folate and vitamin A. Asparagus provides beneficial fiber and antioxidants. Water spinach offers important nutrients when consumed in moderation. The key is understanding how to time and portion these vegetables based on your individual health status and medications. If you're over 60 and taking any medications that affect fluid balance, blood pressure, or heart rhythm, these vegetables should be consumed in smaller quantities during daytime hours when your body can better compensate for their effects. Evening consumption should be avoided entirely, especially if you're already limiting fluid intake or taking medications with similar effects. Most importantly, seniors need to understand that their body's responses to even healthy foods have changed fundamentally. The salad that provided energy and nutrition in your 40s can become a dehydration risk in your 70s. The portion sizes that were appropriate when you were younger can overwhelm aging kidneys and cardiovascular systems. As we prepare for our final exploration of dangerous vegetables, remember that each story I've shared represents both a warning and an opportunity. Leon, Joanne, and Linda all eventually learned to enjoy these vegetables safely by adjusting their timing and portions. They discovered that healthy eating for seniors requires understanding, not just what to eat, but when and how much to consume based on their changing physiology. Coming up in our final segment, we'll explore the last category of dangerous vegetables, the stroke mimics. These are foods that can create symptoms identical to stroke without actually causing one, often leading to unnecessary emergency room visits and missed opportunities to address the real underlying problems. Are you ready to discover how the most beloved cooking ingredient and salad staple could be creating false alarms in your brain while masking genuine health risks that need immediate attention? I'm talking about tomatoes, the vibrant red foundation of countless healthy meals. The vegetable that's been praised for its lycopene content and supposed anti-aging properties. For many older Americans, tomatoes represent freshness and vitality. Whether sliced into a summer salad, cooked into a sauce, or served atop a sandwich, you've likely been told for years that tomatoes are good for your heart, your skin, and your overall health. And in many ways, they are. But what you probably haven't been told is that for people over 65, especially those with circulation issues, neurological conditions, or digestive sensitivities, tomatoes can quietly wreak havoc on your brain, creating symptoms that perfectly mimic a stroke without actually causing one. This phenomenon, known as a stroke mimic, can be even more dangerous than an actual stroke because it delays proper diagnosis and treatment of underlying conditions that genuinely threaten your health. The danger lies in tomatoes' complex chemical profile. They're naturally high in histamines, tyramine, and solanine, compounds that, while harmless to most young and healthy individuals, can become problematic in older adults. Histamines and tyramine can trigger inflammation, elevate blood pressure, and disrupt blood vessel tone, especially in the brain. Solanine, a neurotoxin found in nightshade vegetables like tomatoes, can irritate the nervous system when consumed in large or repeated doses. This is exactly what happened to Geraldine Hunt, an 83-year-old retired piano teacher from Charleston, South Carolina, who embodied everything we associate with graceful aging. Geraldine had taught music for over 4 decades, raised 3 children, and maintained her independence and sharp mind well into her 80s. She was the kind of woman who read medical journals to stay informed about her health and genuinely believed in food as medicine. Geraldine's evening ritual had become a source of comfort and pride. Every night, she prepared a warm bowl of homemade tomato soup, rich with herbs and garlic, as part of what she called her healing dinner. She had read extensively about lycopene's benefits for brain health and was convinced that her nightly tomato consumption was protecting her against cognitive decline and cardiovascular disease. For months, Geraldine felt wonderful about her routine. She wasn't overweight, didn't smoke, and her blood pressure was well controlled with medication. But what Geraldine didn't realize was that her beloved tomato soup was slowly creating a chemical storm in her aging body that would soon terrify her family and confuse her medical team. The changes began subtly. Geraldine started experiencing mild headaches that she attributed to seasonal allergies. She noticed that her vision seemed slightly blurry some evenings, but she assumed her prescription needed updating. Occasionally, she felt mildly dizzy after dinner, but she chalked it up to her blood pressure medication, working perhaps a bit too well. What Geraldine and her doctors didn't understand was that the combination of histamines, tyramine, and solanine, from her nightly tomato consumption was creating inflammation in her cerebral blood vessels and disrupting her brain's electrical activity. The acidity of tomatoes was also interfering with her body's absorption of magnesium and calcium, 2 essential minerals involved in nerve function and vascular tone. The morning that changed everything for Geraldine started with what seemed like her worst headache ever. She woke up feeling confused and disoriented, with vision that seemed cloudy and words that came out slurred when she tried to speak. When her daughter arrived for their weekly coffee date and found Geraldine struggling to articulate her thoughts, she immediately feared the worst and called 911. The paramedics rushed Geraldine to the emergency room, where the initial assessment suggested she was having a stroke. Her speech was garbled. Her coordination was off. And she seemed confused about basic information like the date and her address. But when the medical team performed brain scans and blood tests, something puzzling emerged. There was no evidence of a blood clot, no signs of bleeding, and no structural abnormalities in her brain. What the tests did reveal was elevated inflammatory markers throughout her system, subtle electrolyte imbalances, and signs of mild cerebral vasospasm, meaning her brain's blood vessels were constricting unpredictably. This wasn't a classic stroke caused by blocked or ruptured blood vessels. This was what we call a stroke mimic, a condition that looks and feels like a stroke but is caused by chemical and vascular changes rather than an actual circulatory event. After extensive investigation and careful review of Geraldine's habits, it became clear that her nightly tomato soup, combined with her low-sodium diet, mild dehydration, and aging blood vessels, had created the perfect conditions for this episode. Her brain was being overwhelmed by inflammatory compounds, pressure fluctuations, and electrolyte disruptions that mimicked the symptoms of stroke without the typical underlying cause. The diagnosis of stroke mimic might sound less serious than an actual stroke. But for Geraldine and her family, the experience was terrifying and the recovery was slow. Even though there was no permanent brain damage from blocked blood flow, the inflammatory effects and chemical disruptions took weeks to fully resolve. Geraldine's short-term memory remained foggy for months, and she developed anxiety around eating that affected her nutrition and quality of life. "I thought I was doing everything right," Geraldine told me during one of her follow-up appointments. "I read all the research about tomatoes being healthy. I never imagined that something so natural could make me feel like I was having a stroke." Her words capture the essence of why stroke mimics can be so dangerous. They create all the terror and disruption of a real stroke while potentially masking other health issues that need attention. But Geraldine's story also represents hope and the power of comprehensive understanding. Once we identified the connection between her tomato consumption and her symptoms, she was able to make adjustments that allowed her to enjoy tomatoes safely. She learned to eat them in smaller quantities, earlier in the day, and always as part of balanced meals that included foods to counteract their inflammatory effects. As we conclude our journey through the 12 dangerous vegetables, it's crucial to understand that this isn't a story about fear, it's a story about empowerment through knowledge. Every vegetable we've discussed, from spinach to tomatoes, has legitimate nutritional benefits when consumed appropriately. The key is understanding how your aging body processes these foods differently than it did when you were younger. Let me summarize what we've learned about safe vegetable consumption for aging adults. First, timing matters more than you ever imagined. Evening consumption of high oxalate vegetables like spinach, blood sugar disrupting foods like carrots and corn, or dehydrating vegetables like romaine lettuce and asparagus can create overnight conditions that increase stroke risk. Your body's vulnerabilities during sleep magnify the effects of these foods in ways that simply don't occur during daytime consumption. Second, medication interactions are complex and often unpredictable. The vitamin K in broccoli that was harmless when you were younger becomes a medication disruptor when you're taking blood thinners. The natural anticoagulants in garlic can amplify prescription blood thinners to dangerous levels. The diuretic effects of celery can compound the dehydrating effects of blood pressure medications. Third, portion sizes and preparation methods matter more than general nutritional guidelines suggest. The baby carrots that make a healthy snack in small amounts can create dangerous blood sugar fluctuations when consumed by the bagful. The beetroot juice that provides beneficial nitrates in modest quantities can cause dangerous blood pressure drops when consumed in large amounts by seniors on cardiovascular medications. Fourth, your body's changing physiology requires a personalized approach to nutrition. The thirst mechanism that kept you properly hydrated in your youth becomes unreliable after 6 to 8, making dehydrating vegetables more dangerous. The insulin sensitivity that managed blood sugar effectively in your middle years becomes compromised with age, making even natural sugars potentially problematic. Most importantly, communication with your healthcare team is essential. Every supplement you take, every dietary change you make, every new health trend you want to try, should be discussed with professionals who understand your complete medical picture. Your pharmacist can help you understand food-drug interactions. Your doctor can adjust medications based on dietary changes. Your nutritionist can help you create meal plans that work with your aging body rather than against it. The goal isn't to eliminate vegetables from your diet, it's to eat them intelligently. Spinach can still provide iron and folate when consumed in moderation at lunchtime rather than dinner. Broccoli can offer cancer-fighting compounds when eaten consistently in small amounts by people who communicate with their doctors about vitamin K intake. Garlic can provide cardiovascular benefits when used as a culinary ingredient rather than a supplement. Carrots can supply beneficial antioxidants when paired with protein and eaten earlier in the day. The stories I've shared, Robert's devastating stroke from well-intentioned vegetable consumption, Clara's brain bleeding from broccoli-warfarin interactions, Leon's dehydration-induced clots from evening salads, Leia's blood sugar crashes from nighttime carrot snacking, Thomas's hemorrhage from garlic supplements, and Geraldine's terrifying stroke mimic from tomato sensitivity. These aren't meant to frighten you away from healthy eating. They're meant to illustrate that healthy eating for seniors requires wisdom, not just good intentions. Each of these individuals eventually learned to navigate their relationship with food more safely. They discovered that the vegetables they loved could still be part of their lives, but in different ways, at different times, and in different amounts than they had consumed when they were younger. They learned that their aging bodies deserved respect, understanding, and careful attention to how foods affected their unique physiology. As you move forward with this knowledge, remember that you are not fragile, you are experienced. Your body has carried you through decades of life, and it deserves the gift of informed nutrition choices. You don't need to fear food, but you do need to understand how to work with your changing body rather than against it. Start by making one small change at a time. Maybe you move your salad from dinner to lunch. Maybe you reduce your garlic supplement dosage and discuss it with your doctor. Maybe you pair your evening snacks with protein to moderate blood sugar effects. Whatever changes you make them thoughtfully, gradually, and with the guidance of healthcare professionals who understand your individual circumstances. Your brain, your independence, and your quality of life in your golden years depend on the choices you make today. Choose to be informed. Choose to be cautious without being fearful. Choose to see your aging body as a marvel that requires thoughtful care rather than a problem to be fixed. And most importantly, choose to believe that knowledge gives you power over your health destiny. The vegetables in your kitchen can be powerful allies in your quest for healthy aging, but only when you understand how to partner with them safely, wisely, and with respect for the magnificent, changing body that has brought you this far in life.